Welcome back. Welcome back to Hampshire. I think it's 6 years since you worked with us.
Yes, started in 1982 and left in 2012.
Well, you're really welcome back. It's wonderful to have you here. And thank you for giving me this opportunity for us just to kind of talk through reflections about your time here within the domestic abuse context, but obviously going through so much learning and challenge and development here in the constabulary, and having your lens on that is fantastic. So, what are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I think the fact that I'm here and that you are interested in my voice as somebody with lived experience, having been a police officer during my experience of domestic abuse. The fact that you are asking these questions and wanting to know about my experience, tells me that you want to hear it authentically. And that's one of the things I feel really strongly about, is that, like me, you will have lots of people in this organisation who are have been previous victims of domestic abuse, people who are married to victims of domestic abuse, people who were children and grew up in that, and people who are currently suffering now. And actually, my view is that we, as survivors of domestic abuse, have such a lot to offer organisations on how to do the best service, because it's an authentic service. I can't speak for lots of other victims, I can only talk for myself, but the more voices you as an organisation hear, the more likely you are to get that service right for a needs-based service, rather than doing a service to a member of the public. You're actually involving them in the co-creation of that service, so that feels really great, and that's why I'm pleased to be here, to be quite honest.
That's great. And I think one of the things for me as Chief Constable here is I'm really aware that life bumps into all of us, and we have real richness. There's 5,000 people who work here, 1,500 volunteers. Life bumps into all of us, and one of the things I often worry about is that people who are in the police family somehow think they shouldn't live with vulnerability, they shouldn't suffer, and of course that's nonsense. They do. And having those conversations and bringing it out into the light, not for us to pry, not for us to be big brother, but for us to really understand that is really important.
Absolutely. And I feel, obviously in my role now, I spend a lot of time working with people who are working very closely with survivors of domestic abuse, and I've never heard a survivor say, I don't want to help anybody else, I don't want to make it better for anybody else, I want them to have the same that I had. Actually, whether people feel they've had a good service or a not so good service, they always want to share, they always want to use their collateral goods, what happened to them, in a way that helps other people to have the best service possible. So, the fact that you are asking certainly gives me a great deal of joy. That's not the right word, but it makes me feel that what's happened to me is, in that time within the police force is something I can actively use now to make a difference to other people. And there are lots of messages I would want to say. So for me, being a police officer at the time, it was some time ago, I was a young mum as well, and I think one of the messages is that about how you see victims of domestic abuse, and it's very easy to see the kind of underperforming perhaps, or not being at work so often, or coming in late, things that traditionally do happen for some victims, but for other victims, overperformance, staying at work longer and coming in earlier, they are also signals and signs, so coming away from that stereotypical what does a victim look like, and say let's actually just ask, if I'm worried about somebody, I'm worried about my colleague on shift, let's just ask. Let's not put the template of what a victim does and looks like and what they're traditionally said to be acting like. Actually, let's just give opportunity, let's just ask. And I think from my experience of being a police officer and experiencing domestic abuse, I guess I would have wanted more people to say, is everything all right? you know, look a bit pale, or you seem to stay at work a long time. You seem to kind of like really come alive when you're at work, but when I see you at home or out, you seem different. You know, just kind of ask those questions, and you know, don't be afraid to. I think that's what I would want to say, because I think people were afraid to ask me.
I was going to ask about your reflections compared to, you know, you left us a few years ago. You've now spent many months back with us doing the DA Matters training, and you helped train me. And I remember your phrase "collateral good" from that, and I've quoted you since. So, in terms of what you've found now in these most recent few months, what are the things that you've kind of seen within Hampshire Constabulary?
I am seeing people who are prepared to talk about it. I'm seeing, you know, the trainers that, you know, we have coming into your DA Matters learning rooms are talking about not only police employees wanting to say, look, I suffered this, and this is what's happened to me as a child, and I remember this, but they're actually wanting to help their colleagues. They're wanting to say, you know, actually, if you just tried that, that would have worked for me. So that feels really positive. And I think what DA Matters does, and I think what I'm seeing in your force, is that it's opening the dialogue. It's saying it's actually okay to talk about domestic abuse. It's a social problem. It's a human problem. And police officers are human, you know, and police employees, call centre workers, they're human, and they'll have human conditions, and domestic abuse is one of those. And so I'm seeing a much more open dialogue about it. And I think that can only be good, because it will encourage people to start to give opportunity to those people who are struggling to say, yeah, that's happening for me, and not be frightened of doing it, because it's everyday parlance. People are talking about it, same as they would other human things that are happening in society.
It's breaking the mystery and the toxicity of that conversation, which I'm really for. And I think, you know, in policing, people, there will still be some nervousness about crossing over into the evidential chain, and you know, we just need to kind of work through that. And this is about us, as you say, having a relationship and being able to have conversations in a way that feels safe. There'll also be colleagues of ours who perhaps have either been perpetrators or are worried that they might be. You know, there's that side too.
Absolutely.
And we know that can be across all social, all gender, all types of relationship. We know that. So what would your kind of thoughts on that be?
I think again, that's about not being afraid to be curious. Not be afraid to listen in to, you know, someone's talking about their partner, and perhaps that person is very disparaging or seems to be very controlling over the phone, that you might hear a phone call, somebody's ringing their partner from work, or talking about an incident at home in a way that, you know, makes you think, oh, that feels a bit uncomfortable, I'm going to be a bit curious about that. And actually not being frightened of doing that, being aware that that person who might be exhibiting, you know, early signs of coercive controlling behaviour perhaps, you know, that actually they might not want to be doing that, and they actually might be, you know, screaming out for some help to help understand how they can deal with their relationship in a way that doesn't involve being abusive. So I think the talk about it, you know, message is on both sides. It's about saying, if you're somebody who's suffering domestic abuse, give them opportunities to talk about it, opportunities to get the right help, either internally or externally. If you're somebody who you're worried about your own behaviours because you're not able to manage conflict, or there's something going on in your relationship about the way that you respond to your partner, talk about it. Get people to give you some help, you know. And if it's something where, you know, you are at risk to other people, then of course, you know, offer the right help to that person and offer the right, you know, solution to that.
And one of the things I know that can worry some people is because they are within the policing family, is that they worry about any form of kind of criticism or entrenchment of bringing their private life into their professional life. That can be really difficult, I know, for people when they're in policing. How would you kind of respond to that?
I have to say, from my experience, I found that very difficult. My own expectation that I had to be a certain way, and that if I, was experiencing this at home, how did that impact on my ability to do my job? And, I look back now and I think, actually that didn't impact on your ability to do the job.
But do you think people worry about what other people think?
Absolutely, and I definitely did, and that was one of the reasons that was, stopped me from talking openly about it at the time, was the reaction that it might have in other people. But I think, that again, it's where the talk about it. So, when I was going through it, I would watch how people dealt with domestic abuse. I would watch about the way they talked about it, because I'd want to know whether they were a safe person to tell.
Right.
Was my colleague a safe person to tell? I'd watch them, and some people I concluded they were absolutely a safe person to tell, and in some circumstances, I made minor disclosures which kept, they were safe for me to make, but I chose those people very carefully, because I wanted to know that the response I was going to get was the one that would be okay for me, that I wasn't going to be suddenly, rushed into being taken off frontline policing because I'd made a disclosure of domestic abuse. So I needed to hear all of that, and I needed to know that was the response. So I know you've been working as an organisation on some of your responses to people who make disclosures of domestic abuse, and I know that work is really good work, because it's actually saying the procedures are actually now starting to say, let's actually allow people to talk about it.
Yes.
Let's not judge them. Let's actually just assume they can do their job just as well, probably better, because they're, might be high energy, and not make those kind of assumptions that would prevent somebody from disclosing.
You're right, and it's something that we are taking really seriously. So we deliver a great service to the public, but I also want us to deliver a great service to colleagues who are having life bump into them, as I said, to use that other phrase. And just little subtle things, so that someone doesn't have to tell the world. It isn't all over the computer system. It is something that people can be, work carefully through within our environment if they want the police to be the police. But equally, we know, as we do with other members of the public, that isn't right for everyone too. So we are nuanced enough and mature enough to do that well, and I really hope people can have confidence in us to do that.
I am seeing that, because I've been lucky enough to work with some of your colleagues, in helping to shape some of those policies, and that again, and for me, that's my collateral good. That's using what's happened in my past for good for other people, and that just feels really great.
And we've learnt so much from you, and thank you for your generosity. Thank you for giving us your time, your experience, and helping us get better for everyone else. So it's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.